the Rangers still have a lot of work to do building their bullpen, but is one answer to late relief Jon Gray, about what that would mean moving him to the pen, why the Rangers can do it, and why they should do it. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this show. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before we get into what it would mean moving Jon Gray to the pen, why it's the best use of Jon Gray on the 2025 roster, and if the Rangers have the rotational depth to do that, before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Now let's start with the first part of this equation. Do the Texas Rangers have enough depth in the rotation to sustain moving Jon Gray to the bullpen? Now, Gray has been one of the Rangers' more durable starters the last 3 years, and all that is to say, not all that durable. He has been a workhorse in the 2023 rotation, 29 starts in that season, 24 starts in 2022. Last year, just 19 starts, 102 and 2/3 innings. It was his worst season as a member of the Texas Rangers, but this Rangers team needed a lot of help in the rotation, bringing in guys like Jacob deGrom, bringing in Nathan Eovaldi, bringing in Andrew Heaney as well over the past few seasons, also bringing in Max Scherzer. Now, a lot of those guys are gone. Scherzer, almost certainly gone. Jose Urena, who had 9 starts for the Rangers, probably gone. I haven't heard much of anything on his free agent market. Andrew Heaney, who had 31 starts last year, he's gone. Michael Lorenzen is gone. Nathan Eovaldi, though, is back, and that is a huge boost to this rotation. Now, let's look at what this rotation is going to look like on opening day and what the Rangers even need. Well, you need 162 starts. There are going to be 162 starts had by someone in this Rangers roster, in this Rangers system, probably on the team now. I don't anticipate a trade for a starting pitcher at any point in this season. The Rangers have also said that they're done looking for free agent starting pitching outside of course, their pursuit of the Japanese star Roki Sasaki. But let's just look at the rotation on opening day as it stands right now, assuming Jon Gray is in the bullpen. You have Jacob deGrom, Nathan Eovaldi, Tyler Mahle, Cody Bradford, Kumar Rocker. That's probably going to be your 5, if not Jon Gray. I'm not sure if the Rangers will do this, but I think that they should. Now, let's look at how much the Rangers could get starts from these guys, because there are some injury questions about everyone that I just named. Literally everyone that I just named has some kind of injury concern. Not just the baseline concern because they're a pitcher and pitchers are breakable. That's just how they are. But for deGrom, I'm hoping for around 20 to 25 starts for deGrom. That's maybe on the lower side. Maybe he will be fully healthy. Everything will be fine. He'll go 33 starts, win a Cy Young. Everything will be perfect, hunky-dory, wonderful. Not really likely for a guy who has missed so much time heading into his age 37 season, but 20 to 25 feels doable, and I think that he will do that. Now you bring back Nathan Eovaldi. I'm hoping for 25 to 30 starts for Evo. He was the Rangers' leading innings eater last year, 170 and 2/3 innings. Heaney at 160 is the only other pitcher that was above 102.2 innings. Gray was the Rangers' 3rd leading innings eater at 100, and actually, Urena at 109. I missed him there because he was mostly a reliever. But Evo, penciling him in for 25 to 30 starts, I feel like that's reasonable. Maybe it'll be on the lower side. Maybe the Rangers will get unlucky and something will happen, and he will only go 10 to 15. But I'm penciling in 25 30 because it's the offseason and I'm feeling optimistic. Now, we have Tyler Mahle. This is the biggest question in my estimation. I don't know what's going to happen with Mahle. He's going to be in his first full season coming back from Tommy John surgery, as is Jacob deGrom, as will be Kumar Rocker. But Mahle, I think he could go anywhere between 20 and 30 starts. He had been durable at other points in his career. I mean, he made 33 starts, tied for the league lead in 2021. He made basically all his starts in 2020. 9 games started, 10 games overall in that shortened season. 25 the season before in 2019. 23 in his first really full kind of stint in the big leagues back in 2018. The last couple of years, not as much. 2022, he made 23 starts. He missed some time with Minnesota. And in 2023, he had Tommy John surgery after just 5 starts with Minnesota. This year, only 3 and only 12 and 2/3 innings. So I'm not really sure what to make of Mahle. He could be perfectly durable. He could go 30 starts and everything could be just hunky-dory. And he looks like what the Rangers were hoping he would be, which is a middle of the rotation to maybe things are breaking well, number 2, maybe. But probably a good number 3. Then you have Cody Bradford, who missed a lot of this year with a back injury, which they thought was just a stress reaction. It was just all kinds of complicated. Then it was a rib issue, and he only ended up making, I believe it was 13 starts this year. Yes, 13 starts, 14 games, 76 and a third innings. The Rangers were hoping for more from him. They just were. They really could have used some more from Bradford, but that injury was just so complex and so complicated, and they just didn't know when Bradford was going to come back. But when he was on the hill and when he was starting, he was really good. I mean, a 3.5 ERA for a guy who the Rangers didn't expect all that much out of, who throws about 89, 90 miles an hour, but is so freaking effective. I think the Rangers are going to pencil him in for 25 to 30 starts. If he can give them a full season, 160 to 180 innings, that would be huge, because I think he's legitimately earned his spot as a, maybe mid-tier rotation starter. If this guy is your number 4, which at this point it looks like he might be, that is a really good rotation you're sporting. Now, again, pitchers are all very fragile creatures, and who knows exactly how many starts any of these guys are going to make if everybody's going to be healthy, which is almost a sure thing that won't be the case. But the next guy on this list, Kumar Rocker, at the number 5 spot in this rotation, who might end up being the Rangers' number 3 at the end of the year when it's all said and done, because he's got such incredibly high upside. Again, I'm not sure quite what to make for Kumar Rocker. Maybe it's 15 to 20 starts. Maybe it's closer to 10 to 15. Heck, maybe the Rangers end up signing Roki Sasaki and Rocker starts the year in AAA. But I honestly don't see much of a scenario where that happens. I think that Rocker's definitely got a higher upside than Bradford. And if there was one person kicked out of this rotation of these 5 for Roki Sasaki, I think Bradford is the most likely candidate. I think Gray is actually slightly a more likely candidate. But all that to say, looking at all of these, if the Rangers get Sasaki, pencil him in between 15 and 20 starts. So of this group, without Roki Sasaki, that's 105 to 135 starts. If they add Roki, that's 120 to 155 starts. That's all without Jon Gray. I think the Rangers can cover that. Then you look at the spot starters, the guys who are probably going to get a few starts, hopefully are not spending too much time in your rotation outside of one of these guys who I think I would like for him to earn a spot in this rotation by just being that darn good. But the rest of them are more an insurance policy. You have Dane Dunning, probably going to get somewhere between 10 and 15 starts this year. Leiter, somewhere between, I think, 10 and 20 starts. A lot of that, I think, more depends on his development than it would depend on the health of the guys in front of him. And then the Rangers also have Adrian Hauser, who they signed to a minor league deal, who is a really solid back end of your rotation starter. He's a really, really good, if this is your number 6, 7, 8 guy in your rotation. I think he gets somewhere between 5 and 15 starts, so between 25 and 50 starts for the guys that are spot starters. All of this is not including Jon Gray. This team has the depth to withstand moving Jon Gray to the pen. That's what all of this math and numbers and counting is to say. They've got plenty of starters. They've got plenty of guys who can step up in this rotation, even if one of these guys, God forbid, has some kind of an injury that takes them out for multiple months, or Lord forbid anybody have a Tommy John surgery. Hate for that to happen. But even if that does happen, this team has plenty of depth where they could stomach moving Jon Gray to the pen. Now, why would they do that? Why would the Rangers move Jon Gray, who's been a serviceable starter for the last few years, to the bullpen? We'll talk about why that is and how freaking good he could be in that pen right after this. This show is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better. And it's the perfect game. Gametime also has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. They filter out the fluff and show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They got all kinds of different great features on Gametime to get your tickets. They've also got panoramic seat views, so you can see exactly what it's going to look like in the app before you buy. Your purchase is also covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the business and the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. Later on this week, I'll be reviewing the Rangers World Series documentary, talking about what they got right, what they got wrong, and just what it feels like reliving that 2023 championship run. Now, how good could Jon Gray be in the pen? We've already seen a little bit of Jon Gray in the bullpen, mainly in two of the biggest games in franchise history. Jon Gray was a part of it. You may forget, but Jon Gray was a big, big part of that Game 1 of the World Series. It was one of the worst starts that Nathan Eovaldi had in his postseason run with the Texas Rangers. Only 4 2/3 innings, 5 runs given up in that Game 1. Evo just did not have it. And the Rangers pen picked him up in a huge, huge way. Everyone who pitched in that game was fantastic. Dane Dunning, 1 shutout inning. Cody Bradford, 1 shutout inning. Jon Gray, an inning and 2/3, no walks, 1 hit, just a little single, and 4 strikeouts. Then, of course, Will Smith came in, got a couple of outs. Jose Leclerc came in with a couple of perfect innings to get the win in that one, keeping this Rangers team in that game. Then you think about the other close game in that World Series. Of course, we're thinking about Game 3. The moment of Jon Gray's tenure with Texas. There's no way you forgot about this one. Max Scherzer going out of the game early. 3 innings for him, and he comes out after taking that liner to the back and ends up ending his World Series run. Ends up missing a good chunk of time, maybe unrelated to that specific ball to the back, but had back surgery. Jon Gray comes in, throws 3 shutout innings, near perfect, just 1 hit yet again, but 3 strikeouts, no runs, no walks, no nothing, zip, zilch, good day, good night, good evening, get out of here, D-backs. When the World Series was tied 1-1, and the game was incredibly close, Jon Gray came in and had the game of his freaking life. He was so incredibly good. And it wasn't just that year. This past year, we have seen Jon Gray in the bullpen. He was so much more effective as a reliever versus a starter. This year, in 19 starts, he had a 4.70 ERA in 95 2/3 innings, just 7.1 strikeouts per 9, and a whip of 1.348. not great. Not great at all. But in 4 games as a reliever, 7 innings pitched, 10 strikeouts, 2 walks, 1 run that was earned, only 4 hits, a whip of .857, nearly 13 Ks per 9, 12.9 to be precise, and he looked basically unhittable. He looked so freaking good. Now, why is this? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with his fastball. I think a lot of Jon Gray's effectiveness has to do with his fastball, as it does a lot of pitchers. Now, Jon Gray does one thing really, really well. He's got one of the best sliders in baseball. It is truly a magnificent pitch. Always has been. It's always been his calling card. But his fastball has just, it's not been good. In 2023, his slider in terms of run value on Baseball Savant, that was a plus 16. That's in the super red zone. That is in the top quarter of pitches in the league. I think it was probably closer to the top 10% of best pitches in the league, maybe even closer to top 5. I mean, it was just so freaking nasty. But his four-seam fastball was a negative 20 run value. A negative 20, that's one of the worst pitches in the league. Now, one of the things that it allows him to do being in the bullpen is it can throw it a little bit harder. The velocity when he was throwing it in the bullpen was about a mile to a mile and a half faster than when he was throwing it normally. I mean, it was just that little bit of difference that made all the difference. His other secondary pitches, the changeup, curveball, they're fine, but they're not that effective this year. The changeup was a -2 run value, so below average pitch. The curveball was about league average. In 2023, both of those pitches were a +5, so that kind of made a little bit of a difference. Excuse me. He was throwing the sweeper in 2023. That was also a +5 run value. Didn't throw it all that much, so it was just kind of an offshoot of his slider. I wonder if he'll go back to that a little bit more if he's throwing in the pen, or even if he's throwing as a starter, because he just had such a bad year. The curveball was a negative run value in 2023, but it won't have to use those pitches all that much if he is just a reliever, and it can be a darn good one. He's been mostly about a mediocre starter. Now, that's not to just devalue him and say, oh, this guy sucks. Being a mediocre starter in the big leagues is really, really hard to do. It's really hard to do. There's not a whole lot of mediocre starters, and that can provide some value. But when the Rangers have this big a hole in their bullpen as they do right now, I still think they're going to fill it and sign some really good bullpen arms, some relievers. I think a Kirby Yates return is something that they're definitely working on. I wouldn't be surprised if they're at least kicking the tires on David Robertson, or probably at least thinking about, if not talking to, 5 to 10 to 15 other relievers. They won't sign 15, but still, I think that this is more where the Rangers should allocate him. Plus, there are so many different instances of guys who are mediocre starters becoming just lockdown relievers, just absolutely elite. It happens quite literally all the time. It doesn't usually happen in reverse, like Garrett Crochet, of guys being pretty solid relievers and turning into elite starters, but I digress. I can give you 5 different examples. Luke Weaver, Yankees closer in the World Series and down the stretch. Very mediocre starter, much worse than Jon Gray, I might add, for 5, 6, 7 years in the big leagues. And then he moved to the pen, and he's just freaking dynamite. AJ Puck, guy who spent time with the A's and with the Marlins, moved to the pen and became just lights out and got a pretty sizable return for the Marlins at the trade deadline from the Arizona Diamondbacks. Really, really good. Liam Hendricks, a guy who has been a truly elite closer for several seasons, missed some time with an arm injury and also coming back from cancer. But before that, he was a pretty mediocre starter turned absolutely a lights-out reliever. Also, Jeff Hoffman, Griffin Jax, 2 of the guys who were top 10 in Fangraphs WAR among relievers this year. Hoffman of the Phillies, Jax of the Minnesota Twins. Hoffman, I believe, is also a free agent at this point. Maybe the Rangers could kick the tires on bringing him in. But all that to say, this happens a lot. It's really hard to be a at least mediocre starter pitcher starting pitcher in the big leagues. Being a reliever, you can just focus on what you do best. And what Jon Gray does best is throw the crap out of an incredible slider. And if it makes his fastball that much better, just enough to keep opposing hitters off of that slider, then I think that could be by far the best use the Rangers have for Jon Gray. Now, let's look at, will he do it? Does it make that much sense? And how will it impact what the Rangers do the rest of this offseason? Right after this. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get 150 bonus bets if you win. And they've got 2025 World Series odds up. Of course, Dodgers still the favorites at plus 380. The Rangers haven't moved at plus 3,300, but they're now no longer tied with the Rays, who somehow, after trading away Jeffrey Springs, moved up at plus 3,200. So the Rangers are tied with the Tigers plus 3,300 as the 15th best odds. Somehow the Minnesota Twins jumped ahead of them despite doing nothing. The Mariners are still ahead of them. I'm a little confused on this, but this seems like pretty solid odds if you think the Rangers are going to go and do their Bruce Bochy thing of winning a championship every other year. You can go check out all the odds on that and NFL, and no matter what sports you're looking for, they got a bunch of the top ones. Go check it all out at FanDuel.com. Join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The show is also brought to you by SelectQuote. The World Series, the Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. SelectQuote is the best way to get your life insurance because other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, while SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy to your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. You invest so much time to take care of yourself and be the healthiest, best version of you. SelectQuote's exclusive policies can reward that. And if you're in good health, they work with carriers that could get you same-day coverage for up to $5 million, no medical exam required. SelectQuote. They shop, you save. Get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/lockedon. Go to SelectQuote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/lockedon. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. Later on this week, I'll be looking at Kirby Yates versus David Robertson. If the Rangers have to pick just one to bring back, which one should they choose? Talk about that in a later episode this week. But right now, how much would Jon Gray moving to the bullpen help what this pen is right now? Well, you look at the FanGraphs roster resource, and they kind of project out what the roster looks like based on who's here right now. And right now, the Rangers closer is listed as Jacob Webb. And their setup relievers are, well, Daniel Robert and Jacob Latz. It's not ideal. It's not really where the Rangers want to be with their bullpen. So right now, I would very much rather Jacob Webb not be the Rangers closer. If he's pitching in high leverage situations, I think that's fine. I think that's solid. I think that's why they signed him. But the Rangers still have a lot of work to do with this pen, all that to say. And adding Jon Gray alone does not fix this pen. You plug Jon Gray into the closer's role, and then your setup people are Jacob Webb and Jacob Latz. The two Jacobs in the pen is still not great. Even if you throw Walter Pennington in there, maybe Mark Church will get some high leverage relief outings. I wouldn't be surprised. I would actually be surprised if that didn't happen. But it moves the Rangers having to get 2 to 3 relievers to 1 to 2 more leverage relievers. They still have Josh Sborz on the roster, but he's going to miss the first 2 to maybe 3 months of the season. That is a leverage reliever that I think the Rangers can count on. Maybe you feel differently, but I think that Josh Sborz has shown when healthy, he can be a dynamite late leverage reliever. But the Rangers still need a couple of arms. Maybe, I think probably no matter what, if Gray even moves to the pen, I'd feel better about having 2 high leverage relievers and then sign 2 to 3 guys that are maybe mid leverage, riskier guys who are coming off of injuries who would be much cheaper, that maybe they work out and they're great, or maybe they're not. Kind of like the Rangers did with Kirby Yates last year, like they had done with other relievers in the past. Yates is just the prime example of that really working out. But I think this really helps solidify what is the biggest glaring weakness on this Rangers roster right now. Obviously, there's still a lot of offseason left to make these moves, to sign relievers. Heck, Chris Young has already talked about putting Nathan Eovaldi to work as a recruiter, bringing in almost assuredly starting pitchers. There's also been some talk about the Rangers maybe signing a bat. I don't really see that happening unless the Rangers are trading away Nathaniel Lowe, which I would rather not happen. I think he fits fine. I talked a lot about it last week with the Jake Burger trade, why I think that Lowe should definitely stay here. But the biggest need is very much the bullpen. And the starting pitching is solid. There are also some prospects who could end up coming up and making some spot starts this year. I think Emiliano Teodo is definitely one of those guys. It would probably be in the later half of this season if the Rangers want him to make his major league debut early on and just move him to the bullpen. Say, you throw in the triple digits and you got one of the nastiest breaking balls in the system. Let's just throw you the pen right now. I think that could happen, but I don't think it's the way the Rangers want to go. Mitch Bratt, I would not be surprised if he made his major league debut sometime this year. I think he'll be 21 years old, maybe 22. Still very young. It looked pretty solid at times in Double-A Frisco. Has the upside of a guy who's a back of the rotation pitcher. I think he could end up getting as many as 5 starts maybe this year. Maybe I'm being too aggressive. Winston Santos also spent some time in Double-A. Didn't look as good there as he looked in High A, but I think he's still got the makings of a back into maybe mid-rotation starter. Maybe the Rangers also go ahead and shove him in the pen because his fastball is just ungodly good. Also, Jose Corniel missed all of this past season. The guy who the Rangers are very, very high on. They added him to their 40-man roster before last year to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. Some people might have forgotten about him because so many different guys all popped up and had great years this year in terms of pitchers in the farm system. And also, maybe we see Alejandro Rosario this year. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch because even though he was called up to Double-A at the end of the year, he never ended up making his Double-A debut because he had thrown so many innings. I don't think it's likely that he makes his big league debut next year. But again, you listing all of those guys out, you see that the Rangers really have the depth to sustain whatever kind of injuries they have in the rotation, barring some kind of catastrophic event, which is entirely possible because pitchers, again, predicting how healthy they're going to be feels like an impossible feat. But what feels like a very safe prediction is saying that if Jon Gray is in this bullpen, he is going to be dynamite. He is going to be nasty. He is going to make hitters look awful. And also, he's talked about it this year and also in that World Series run, says, hey, if I need to go to the bullpen because that's what's best for the team, I'll do it. I'll help this team out whatever way this team wants to use me that thinks it's best for winning. He's up for that. He is a phenomenal teammate. He has no ego about himself, or I guess just enough ego to be a big leaguer, but not an obscene ego where his ego would be crushed if he was moved to the pen. And he could be a much more productive member of this roster, I think, in the bullpen. I mean, just the way that slider would play way up if you have to go to just 2 pitches as opposed to the 4 or 5 that you need to be a starter. Just focus on having that disgusting slider, make righties look incredibly bad, and just shore up what has been a pretty big weakness for this Rangers team for the last couple of seasons, and they do that. And I think this team is in a much, much better position with Jon Gray in that pen. Now, one last little bit of news. The Rangers did make a signing since I last talked about any signings last week. They signed Tucker Barnhart to a minor league deal. Barnhart is a career backup catcher. He is fine. he might get some starts this year. It kind of shows the what the Rangers think of Sam Huff. I have been a Huff believer I was a Huff believer for a while. I say was because it is past tense. I don't know how Huff is still on this 40-man roster, why they didn't use his 40-man spot to protect one more guy from the Rule 5 draft, but the Rangers didn't end up losing anybody in the Rule 5 draft like I thought they would. They didn't end up picking anybody either, but they didn't lose anybody. So adding Barnhart is just a guy who is a defensive wizard and cannot hit worth a lick. An OPS below 500 last year. Heck, it's been below 600 since 2021 was the last time it was above 600. It hasn't been above 700 all but, a couple of seasons in his career. 669 career OPS in 11 years. Just another solid guy where if the Rangers have an injury at catcher to either Heim or Higashioka, they've got a guy who's going to be 34, who's been to the big leagues for 11 seasons, who has got 900 games of big league experience to kind of come in, step in, and fill that role and catch maybe 10, 15 games this year at some point. But they also designated Ronzi Contreras for assignment, a guy they picked up off of waivers, spent time with the Pirates and the Angels last year, a guy who spent about, a month maybe on this 40-man roster, a guy who I was surprised that they claimed, again, taking up a 40-man spot for guys they could have protected in the Rule 5 draft, but they knew better than me. They knew which guys would and wouldn't get picked because none of the guys they left unprotected were picked. So that all worked out exactly like they were hoping. Hopefully, Jon Gray moving to the pen would work out exactly like the Rangers are hoping. If they end up signing Roki Sasaki, I think it feels more like a sure thing that Jon Gray is going to move to the pen because it probably moves Cody Bradford to the pen. It probably lessens the load of Kumar Rocker and the amount of starts that the Rangers are going to ask for from him. Maybe the Rangers go with a straight up 6-man rotation, and that's a way they want to keep Jon Gray in it. But I just think it would be a much better use of Jon Gray and his talents, making him a sick, nasty reliever as opposed to a middle-of-the-road starter. But either way, I think that we will always appreciate those World Series relief appearances from Jon Gray and how dominant he was there. And if the Rangers do plan on starting him this year, I think part of me will always be wondering, what the heck would it look like to have Jon Gray as a full-time, nasty, dominant reliever? That's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.